So as we come to the end of our class, it's worth looking back at the book and asking, is there anything that we've missed? Are there components to training that we have not yet really discussed? And I think that there's a pretty important one that I want to make the subject of this lecture. And that is the difference between content and character in training. Now your book, it takes what I consider is a fairly content-oriented approach. We look at needs assessment, figuring out what content they need to know, and then we figure out ways to build that content into the training. And then past that, I would say that there is some attention paid to the actual delivery of the training. But that for the most part, training is thought of as the transmission of content or creating spaces where content can be collaborated on. And this is a perfectly lovely, it's a wonderful way of thinking about training. But there is another way, and that concerns character. The character approach to training is instead focusing on what individuals need to know or things that they need to be able to know how to do, is to take kind of a more humanistic approach and to say, who is it that my trainees are trying to be? And then as a trainer, how can I make available that way of being? Now, that sounds a little abstract and a little weird, so let me use a concrete and literature-grounded concept. If you study organizational communication or you study leadership, then maybe you've come across the distinction between transactional leadership and transformational leadership. So transactional leadership is kind of a give-take relationship. As a leader, I set up these rules, and if you follow these rules, I'll give you this and this, and if you don't follow these rules, I'll burn you in this and this and this way. And there's nothing wrong with transactional leadership. In fact, many studies find that transactional leadership is really appropriate and sometimes the most powerful form of leadership in a given situation. However, transformational leadership is leadership of a different kind. So instead of setting out a series of rules, instead of laying out, okay, it's tit for tat, this for that, a transformational leader is someone who offers a way of being, and they sort of lead through charisma or by example, and they set themselves up as an exemplar of certain virtues, or they look at the world in a way and invite other people to look in the world in that same way. And through this, they offer a process of transformation. They make available a kind of humanity, and they make a particular perspective seem real to other people. Now, if you think about this, some of your greatest teachers are, in a way, transactional leaders or provide a character approach to training. So, I mean, think about it. Think about the teachers that changed the way that you thought about the world, the teachers that really inspired you. Sometimes the content was irrelevant. Sometimes, you didn't care about it, what they were talking about at all. Maybe they were a history teacher and you didn't give a crap about history. But it was the way that they talked, it was the way they put ideas together, it was the way that they looked at things in general and thought about stuff that made you think, you know what, that person inspires me, that person makes me want to read more books, that person makes me want to travel more, that person makes me want to live this kind of life, whatever. As I think back, one of my favorite teachers in the world was this short philosophy teacher. His name was San Ki Kim. And I loved him. I loved him because he was friendly and jovial, and he would tell jokes and tell kind of like these ridiculous stories in class. But sometimes, and usually, they would like come around and like make these great points. And I don't know, he was great. Now, he inspired me. And I didn't end up studying the things that he studied. I didn't end up the content that he spoke about didn't really impact my life in a lot of ways, but the character that he offered me, the example that he offered me, that stuck with me, and I would say that has made a pretty powerful impact in my life. And most of us have stories like that. That's actually the value of getting an education from a lot of different people, having dozens of different teachers, because not every teacher is going to resonate with every person. And similarly with training, right? Not every trainer is going to resonate with every person. Now, So you might be sitting there saying, Tim, okay, I get it. One way that you can think about training is from a character perspective. There's this idea of transactional and transformational leadership, and certainly I've had teachers who inspired me and maybe made changes in me beyond the particular content that they were covering. But how do I actually do that in a training? Because this is frankly a skills course, and I'm here to make you better trainers. So if I'm going to talk about a way of doing training, then I better be able to deliver on the how-tos. So how to approach training from a character perspective. Well, I've already given the suggestion that you think about it from a transformational perspective. So if you want to know more, look up transformational leadership, and you can find some details on the traits of transformational leaders. But past that, I want to give you two things. One of them is about being available, making your character available, and the second is about embodiment, and that's where we'll end. So first, one of the ways that we train people is that we show up. And I know that sounds silly because of course you show up, right? You go there to the place and give a training. But if you think about it, there are a lot of people in the world who didn't go to that place and didn't show up in order to give the training. They didn't come. And that says something. That you come at all says something. It says, well, maybe I'm getting a paycheck and I'm doing my time and I'm doing this stuff, and when I'm done, I'm gone, and when I'm here, I'm barely here, and although I'm talking to you, I'm not thinking about you. I'm just running through the motions and delivering nothing but content. People know, people can sense when someone's in front of them but not really there. And they can also sense that even though somebody is through a video camera and they may be in a different state or even country than you, that they are actually there and that they do care about what it is that they're talking about. People know that we can sense when somebody has made their humanity available to us. And frankly, it turns us off when somebody isn't present. This is in a way related to the interpersonal immediacy that I talked about in the last lecture. Making ourselves available on an interpersonal level is an important part of offering our character. So, what that means in a practical way, sorry about the plane and the car, what that means in a practical way is when you show up to a place, make yourself, in a way, vulnerable to your trainees. You can come with credibility, you can come with expertise, you can come prepared, but also come ready to experience, ready to learn, ready to know. And that openness, that vulnerability is often a powerful motivator for people to sort of engage mutually in that vulnerability. Because being open is kind of a prerequisite to learning. And if you come with your humanness, with your character, with your thoughts and feelings, with who you are kind of out there for everybody to see, then they will see that as an invitation for them to bring who they are, their character, how they see things, their humanity to that training stage as well. So that's the first thing, be available. The second thing is about embodiment. And here's what I mean. There are lots of different kinds of knowledge, and there are a lot of different ways to know something. You can know something cognitively, you can get it, you can understand it. You can know something emotionally. You can know something, in your gut, kind of intuitively. And all of those things taken together allow you to know something in an embodied way. It allows you to not only know, but to be that knowledge. It allows you it to become real in you. So think about a teacher, right? A teacher embodies sort of academics. They embody scholarship. They live lives of scholars. They get really excited about ideas, and they are embodiments of knowledge, right? But think then about a parent. Parents embody other things. They embody what it means to be a member of a family. They embody what it means to be a citizen. If they're spiritual, they embody what it means to be a person of faith, or if they're non-spiritual. They embody what it means to be a person who lives without faith, right? Parents embody things for children. If you think about leaders, political leaders, they embody ideologies. They embody ways of thinking about the world and ways to fix it. One of the most important things that you can do as a politician is to come to stand for something. You come to represent, and you stand in for that idea. There was a period of time, like it or hate it, that Obama stood for change. That's what change meant. Now, there are arguments about how that's all panning out, and all kinds of sides of that argument. But there's real power to coming to embody something. One of my favorite stories ever. This woman brings her son to the Buddha, and she says, "Buddha, I want you to tell my son to stop eating sugar." And he looks at her, and then looks at the son, and looks back at her and says, "Come back to me in 2 weeks." Not really understanding it, but you know, it's the Buddha, you regularly don't know what he's talking about. She leaves, and she comes back in 2 weeks. And the woman says, "Buddha, I would like you to tell my son to stop eating sugar." And he turns and very sincerely and honestly says to the child, "I want you to stop eating sugar." And the kid nods very profoundly because he's just been told something by the Buddha, and he walks off. The mom kind of looks over her shoulder to make sure her son is out of earshot and says, "Buddha, why did you make me come back 2 weeks later? Couldn't you have just said that when I asked you the first time?" And he said, 2 weeks ago, I was still eating sugar. Now, the reason I love that story is because it's easy to make you can make whatever words you want to come out of your mouth. You, as a trainer, you can train anybody anything. If you can set up a lecture, facilitate a handful of activities, and get a conversation going about it, you can train anything. But if you are really trying to help people, if you're really trying to change people, people really resist being changed by someone who has not yet changed themselves. We resent it when our parents tell us to do things that we know they didn't do when they were our age. We don't like being told by our boss to do something that we know that they would never do themselves. And so when you think about, how do I become an excellent trainer? How do I go into an organization, assess what it needs, and help it become what it needs? Part of that is asking very honest questions about who we are and who we're willing to be and what we're willing to embody. And it's not an easy task, because you may be asked to do things that you aren't ready to do. And it's harder to embody something than it is to figure it out. It's harder to embody something than it is to learn it. Because embodying something requires a certain set of changes that happen inside ourselves. And those are difficult at best. But in the long run, I think that it's a valuable way of thinking about training. If you want to become a trainer who does this, this, and this, think, what can I do on a daily basis? What experiences can I have throughout my life? What ideas can I expose myself to? Ultimately, who can I become so that when I talk about things that I believe in, other people stop their day and say, wait a second, this isn't just somebody else who got pulled into our organization. There's something going on here. And that humanity, if properly embodied and then properly made open, has the potential to transform organizations in ways that we often think are impossible. So this is it's a whole different paradigm, and maybe there's a whole other class to be taught here, which is how to train from a humanistic or from a character perspective. But as I send you off into the world as freshly trained trainers, it's worth adding that little bit. That it is a really great idea to properly assess needs, to set up your training in the right kind of way, to be clear about your objectives, and to assess your training in the end so that it can be improved. But equally important is asking this question: who do I need to be, and how can I be available to the people that I train, so that when I stand in front of them, it's not just a stream of content, it's not just a transmission of content, it's not just a collaboration of content, it's also a transition of character and a collaboration of character, so that we can collectively be the men and women that we need to be in the situations that we face.